My sister-in-law lost her baby and decided mine should replace it, so she and my brother started planning to raise my son while my mom helped them research legal ways to prove I was an unfit mother until I got a restraining order. I'm Karen, 26F, and I just had my first child 3 weeks ago. My son Daniel is perfect and healthy. My husband Phil, 28M, and I have been together for 5 years and married for 2. We both work in tech and live about 4 hours away from my family. The problem started when I announced my pregnancy at 6 months. My brother Herbert, 32M, and his wife Sarah, 29F, have been trying to have kids for 3 years. Sarah had 2 miscarriages in the first year, then nothing for a while. Last December, she got pregnant and made it to 7 months before losing the baby. It was devastating for both of them. When I told the family about my pregnancy, Sarah immediately left the room. Herbert followed her and they didn't come back. My mom Rachel, 58F, told me later that Sarah cried for hours that night. I understood her pain, but I couldn't hide my pregnancy forever. Things got weird after that. Sarah started sending me articles about pregnancy complications and stillbirths. She would call my mom asking detailed questions about my health and my doctor visits. When I went home for Christmas, she kept touching my belly without asking and making comments about how she would take care of the baby better than anyone. My mom raised Herbert and me after our dad died when I was 12. She's always been protective of both her kids, but she has a soft spot for Herbert because he stayed close to home while I moved away for college and work. She also adores Sarah and treats her like the daughter she never had. After Christmas, my mom started having strange conversations with me. She would ask if Phil and I were really ready for parenthood since we both work long hours. She questioned whether we had enough money saved and whether our apartment was big enough. She kept bringing up how Sarah works part-time from home and would have more time for a baby. I thought she was just worried about me being a first-time mom so far from family. Then in February, when I was 8 months pregnant, she called me with a proposal that made my blood run cold. She said Sarah was having a really hard time since her loss. The grief counselor suggested that being around babies might help her heal. My mom wondered if Sarah could come stay with us for a few weeks after Daniel was born to help with the baby and bond with him. I told her absolutely not. That's when she revealed the real plan. My mom said Sarah and Herbert had been discussing adoption options, but they were expensive and had long waiting lists. Since I was young and had my whole career ahead of me, maybe it would be better if Sarah and Herbert raised Daniel. They had a house with a yard, Sarah could be a stay-at-home mom, and they were more mature and financially stable. I hung up on her. Phil was working late that night. I sat in our nursery looking at all the things we had bought for our son and tried to process what had just happened. My own mother was suggesting I give away my baby to my brother's wife. The call started the next day. Not just from my mom, but from Herbert too. He said Sarah was barely eating or sleeping. She had turned the spare room into a nursery and was buying baby clothes. He was worried about her mental health and thought having a baby to care for might save her. He actually said I would be helping Sarah heal and giving Daniel a better life at the same time. He pointed out that Phil and I weren't even married yet, that we lived in a small apartment, and that we both worked 60-hour weeks. How could we possibly give a child the attention he deserved? I told Herbert that Phil and I were planning to get married before the baby came and that plenty of working parents raise healthy, happy children. He said I was being selfish and that family should help family. The pressure intensified over the next few weeks. My mom would call crying about how Sarah was wasting away with grief. My Aunt Carol, 54F, my mom's sister, started calling too. She said the whole family was worried about Sarah and that I had the power to help her. Sarah herself never called me directly, but she started commenting on all my social media posts. When I posted a picture of the nursery, she commented about how she had the same crib picked out. When I posted about baby clothes shopping, she said she had already bought outfits in newborn and 3-month sizes. The breaking point came when I was 38 weeks pregnant. Sarah and Herbert showed up at our apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. Phil was at the grocery store, so I was alone when I answered the door. Sarah pushed past me and went straight to the nursery. She started rearranging things and talking about how she would set everything up at their house. She had brought a car seat and said she wanted to make sure it was installed correctly for when they took Daniel home. I told her she needed to leave. That's when she broke down completely. She got on her knees in the nursery and begged me to let her have my baby. She said God took her son away because she was meant to have mine. She promised she would let me visit and be involved in his life. Herbert tried to calm her down, but she was screaming about how it wasn't fair that I got to have a healthy baby when I didn't even want one as much as she did. She said I was too young and selfish to be a good mother. I called the police. By the time they arrived, Phil was back and had gotten Sarah to stop screaming. The officers took statements but said it was a family matter. They suggested we get a restraining order if we felt unsafe. That same day, Phil and I went to the courthouse and got married. We needed to make sure our parental rights were clear and that my family couldn't try to interfere legally. Daniel was born 2 weeks later. We didn't tell my family I was in labor. My mom found out through a mutual friend who saw Phil's post on social media announcing the birth. The call started immediately. My mom was crying about missing her grandson's birth. Herbert was angry that we hadn't included them. But it was Sarah's reaction that worried me most. She called from Herbert's phone and when I answered thinking it was him, she started talking about how excited she was to finally meet her son. She said she had his room all ready and had taken time off work to be with him full time. I realized she truly believed Daniel was going to be hers. Phil and I made the decision to go no contact with my family for now. We blocked their numbers and made our social media accounts private. My mom has been sending letters and packages to our apartment building, but we returned them unopened. I found out through a cousin that Sarah has been telling people in their church that we're going through a difficult time and that they're planning to adopt our baby. She's been asking for donations for baby items and has set up a nursery that she shows visitors. My mom has been telling relatives that we're being influenced by Phil's family and that we'll come to our senses eventually. She says Sarah just needs time to bond with Daniel and everything will work out. I never expected my own mother to support someone else's claim on my child. I thought family was supposed to protect each other, not conspire to take away what matters most. Phil has been incredible through all of this. His parents live across the country, but they've been supportive and have offered to help us relocate if needed. They were shocked when I told them what my family was doing. We're considering moving before Daniel gets older. I don't want to live in fear that my brother and his wife might try to take him. I also don't want Daniel to grow up hearing that he belongs with someone else. The hardest part is grieving the family relationships I thought I had. I believed my mom would support me no matter what. I thought my brother would be protective of me and excited to be an uncle. Instead, they've chosen Sarah's delusion over my rights as Daniel's mother. I keep wondering if I'm being too harsh. Sarah has been through real trauma, and grief can make people do desperate things. But wanting to raise someone else's child isn't just grief, it's something much more troubling. Phil thinks we should get a lawyer involved to document everything in case we need legal protection later. Part of me hopes this will all blow over once Sarah gets proper help, but another part of me knows this might be our new reality. I just want to raise my son in peace without constantly looking over my shoulder. I never thought becoming a mother would mean losing the rest of my family. Update 1: I wasn't planning to post again, but things have gotten more complicated. Daniel is now 11 weeks old and thriving. The newborn phase has been challenging, but Phil and I are managing well. We've settled into a routine and I'm planning to return to work in a few weeks. A month ago, I decided to reach out to my mom's pastor at their church. Pastor Williams, 50 SM, has known our family for years and officiated at Herbert and Sarah's wedding. I thought he might be able to help Sarah understand that what she's doing isn't healthy. I called him on a Tuesday evening and explained the situation. He listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he said he had noticed some concerning behavior from Sarah but hadn't realized the full extent of what was happening. He told me Sarah had been coming to him for counseling sessions about her grief, which was normal and healthy. What concerned him was that she had started talking about a baby that was coming to their family soon. When he asked for details, she would become vague and change the subject. Pastor Williams said he would speak with Sarah and Herbert together and try to help them understand that their current path wasn't healthy for anyone involved. He also offered to mediate a conversation between our families if we were willing. I agreed to give him 2 weeks to work with them, then we would reassess. The first week passed quietly. No calls, no unexpected visits, no packages. Phil and I actually started to hope that professional intervention might help Sarah face reality. Then Pastor Williams called back with an update that made everything worse. He had met with Herbert and Sarah 3 times. In the first meeting, Herbert seemed to understand that their plan wasn't reasonable. He admitted that Sarah's grief had clouded their judgment and that they needed to respect our decision to keep Daniel. But Sarah's response was completely different. She insisted that I had asked them to raise Daniel because Phil and I weren't ready for parenthood. She said our going no contact was just temporary stress and that we would come around when we realized how hard parenting really was. Pastor Williams told me that Sarah had detailed plans for Daniel's christening, his first Christmas, and even his first day of school. She talked about him as if he was already living with them. In the second meeting, Pastor Williams tried to help Sarah understand that Daniel belonged with his parents. Sarah became agitated and accused him of not understanding God's plan. She said her baby had died so that she could raise Daniel instead. By the third meeting, Herbert had changed his tune completely. Instead of acknowledging that their plan was unreasonable, he started defending Sarah's right to hope for a family. He said I was being cruel by keeping Daniel from someone who would love him unconditionally. Pastor Williams told me he was ending his counseling relationship with them and recommending they seek professional help elsewhere. He was concerned that Sarah's grip on reality was getting weaker, not stronger. He also revealed something that made my stomach drop. Sarah had been showing up at the church nursery during services and helping with the babies. She had started referring to one particular infant as practice for when Daniel came to live with them. The baby's parents had asked her to stop holding their child, but Sarah kept insisting she was just helping out. Pastor Williams had to ban her from the nursery, which caused a scene that the whole congregation witnessed. After hearing all this, Phil and I decided we needed to take more serious precautions. We installed security cameras around our apartment and changed our locks. We also started varying our routines and being more careful about posting anything online. 2 weeks after Pastor Williams called, we got confirmation that our precautions were necessary. Our neighbor knocked on our door on a Saturday morning. Mrs. Chen, 40 SF, lives across the hall and has always been friendly. She told us a woman had been asking about us in the lobby the previous afternoon. The woman claimed to be my sister and said she was planning a surprise visit. She wanted to know our work schedules and when we usually left the apartment. Mrs. Chen thought something seemed off about her story and refused to give out any information. Mrs. Chen described the woman as blonde, about 30 years old, wearing a pink sweater and carrying a diaper bag. It was definitely Sarah. That same day, I found out through my cousin Emma, 24F, that Sarah had been posting in local parenting groups on social media. She was asking for advice about introducing a baby to a new home and talking about adoption timelines. Emma screenshot some of the posts before Sarah deleted them. In one, Sarah asked how long it typically takes for biological parents to adjust after placing a child for adoption. In another, she asked about the best way to transition a baby to a new caregiver without causing trauma. The posts made it clear that Sarah still believed Daniel was coming to live with them. She wasn't asking hypothetical questions, she was making actual plans. Emma also told me that my mom had been calling relatives asking if anyone had heard from us. She was telling people that we were struggling with postpartum depression and needed family support, but were too proud to ask for help. My mom was painting herself as the concerned grandmother who just wanted to help her daughter through a difficult time. She wasn't mentioning Sarah's demands at all. Phil and I realized we needed to be more proactive. We drafted a letter to my mom, Herbert, and Sarah, making our position absolutely clear. We stated that Daniel would be staying with us permanently and that any attempts to take him or interfere with our family would result in legal action. We sent the letter via certified mail so we would have proof they received it. We also kept copies for our records in case we needed them later. Herbert called 2 days after receiving the letter. He was angry and accused us of being dramatic and vindictive. He said Sarah was finally healing and that our letter had caused her to have a setback. He claimed Sarah had been making progress in accepting that Daniel wasn't coming to live with them, but our letter had convinced her that we were being manipulated by outside forces. Now she was more determined than ever to save Daniel from our influence. I told Herbert that Sarah's healing couldn't come at the expense of my family's safety and well-being. He said I was being selfish and that Sarah just needed more time. When I hung up, I realized that Herbert had become just as delusional as Sarah. He genuinely believed that their desire for a child justified trying to take mine. The situation had moved beyond grief and into something much more dangerous. Sarah wasn't just hoping things would work out in her favor, she was actively planning to take Daniel from us. Phil and I started looking at apartments in other cities. We weren't ready to move yet, but we wanted to have options if things escalated further. We also consulted with a family lawyer who specialized in custody and protection orders. She reviewed our documentation and said we had grounds for a restraining order if Sarah made any more direct contact or threats. The lawyer also recommended we start keeping a detailed log of all interactions and incidents. She said if this ever went to court, we would need clear evidence of the pattern of harassment and delusion. I never imagined I would need legal protection from my own family. But Sarah's behavior was becoming more unpredictable, and my mom and Herbert were enabling her instead of getting her the help she needed. Daniel was growing and changing every day, and I wanted to focus on enjoying these early months with him. Instead, I was constantly worried about protecting him from people who should have been celebrating his arrival. Update 2: Daniel is now 7 months old and has started crawling. He's such a happy baby and barely cries unless he's hungry or tired. Phil and I have found our rhythm as parents, and I've been back at work for 3 months now. Things had been quiet on the family front until last week, when everything exploded in a way I never saw coming. My cousin Emma called me on Monday evening with news that changed everything. She had been hesitant to get involved in the family drama, but what she discovered made her realize she needed to speak up. Emma works as a social worker in the county where my mom and Herbert live. Last month, she was assigned a case involving a couple who had been reported for attempting to purchase a baby through illegal channels. When Emma arrived for the home visit, she was shocked to discover the couple was Herbert and Sarah. A neighbor had called the county after overhearing Sarah on the phone discussing payment arrangements for a private adoption that sounded suspicious. The neighbor was concerned because Sarah had been showing off a nursery and claiming a baby was coming soon, but no legitimate adoption agencies seemed to be involved. Emma had to recuse herself from the case immediately due to the family connection, but she learned enough details to understand what had been happening. Herbert and Sarah had been working with someone they met online who claimed to connect birth mothers with adoptive families. They had already paid several $1,000s in fees and were waiting for a baby to become available. The person they were working with turned out to be running a scam, taking money from desperate couples while pretending to arrange adoptions that would never happen. Several other couples had lost significant amounts of money to the same scheme. But the most disturbing part was what the investigator found in Herbert and Sarah's house. The nursery wasn't just set up for any baby, it was specifically decorated for Daniel. They had printed out photos of Daniel from Phil's social media accounts and put them in picture frames around the room. Sarah had been buying clothes in the exact sizes Daniel would need as he grew. She had even created a photo album documenting his first months as if she had been there for all of it. The investigator also found a detailed timeline Sarah had created showing when she expected Daniel to come live with them. She had marked dates for when she thought we would realize we couldn't handle parenthood and when the transition would happen. Emma said the social worker who took over the case described it as one of the most elaborate delusions she had ever encountered. Sarah truly believed Daniel belonged to her and that everything she was doing was preparation for his inevitable arrival. Herbert was fully supporting Sarah's delusion. He had been researching grandparents' rights laws and looking into legal ways to challenge our custody. He had even consulted with lawyers about what grounds they might have to claim we were unfit parents. The county closed their investigation after determining that Herbert and Sarah were victims of the adoption scam rather than perpetrators. But they referred Sarah for mandatory mental health evaluation based on concerns about her grip on reality. Emma told me all of this because she was worried about our safety. The social worker had recommended that Herbert and Sarah have no contact with children until Sarah received proper treatment, but there was no legal mechanism to enforce this recommendation. After Emma's call, Phil and I had a long discussion about what to do next. We realized we needed to take immediate action to protect Daniel and ourselves. The next day, we met with our lawyer and provided her with all the new information Emma had shared. Our lawyer was alarmed by the extent of Sarah's planning and recommended we file for a protective order immediately. She also suggested we document Daniel's current living situation thoroughly in case Herbert and Sarah tried to make false reports to child services. We took photos of our clean, safe home and gathered documentation of Daniel's medical care and our employment stability. On Wednesday, we received the protective order prohibiting Herbert, Sarah, and my mom from coming within 500 feet of us or our apartment. The order also prohibited any contact through third parties. We thought this might finally put an end to the situation, but we were wrong. On Friday evening, my mom showed up at Phil's workplace. She somehow got past building security and confronted him in the parking lot as he was leaving. She was crying and begging him to reconsider keeping Daniel from his family. She said Sarah was getting worse instead of better and that seeing Daniel might be the only thing that could help her heal. My mom actually asked Phil how much money it would take for us to let Sarah spend time with Daniel. She offered to pay for our rent and childcare if we would just allow supervised visits. When Phil explained that Daniel wasn't for sale and that Sarah needed professional help, my mom became angry. She accused Phil of turning me against my family and said he was destroying Sarah's last chance at happiness. Phil recorded the conversation on his phone, which was smart because my mom later denied saying most of it. Building security eventually escorted my mom off the property, and Phil's company filed a report with the police since she had violated the protective order. That weekend, we made the decision to move. We had been considering it for months, but this incident convinced us that staying in the area wasn't safe for any of us. Phil's company has a branch office in another state, and they agreed to let him transfer immediately given the circumstances. My company allows remote work, so I can keep my job while we relocate. We're not telling anyone in my family where we're moving. Emma knows we're leaving the area, but we haven't given her our new address. We love her for trying to help us, but we can't risk the information getting back to the others. The hardest part about moving is accepting that this situation isn't going to resolve itself. Sarah's delusion has only gotten stronger over time, and my mom and Herbert are enabling her instead of getting her proper help. I keep thinking about the photo album Emma described, with pictures of Daniel's milestones that Sarah had collected and arranged as if she had been there. The level of fantasy and planning involved is terrifying. We're leaving this weekend. We hired professional movers and arranged everything through Phil's company so there's no paper trail leading back to us personally. I know some people might think we're overreacting, but the social worker's report made it clear that Sarah's behavior was escalating, not improving. The fake adoption scheme showed how far she was willing to go to get a baby, even if it meant breaking the law. Daniel deserves to grow up without this cloud hanging over him. He deserves to have parents who can focus on his needs instead of constantly looking over their shoulders. I'm grieving the loss of the family I thought I had, but I'm also relieved that we're taking steps to protect the family we've built together. Update 3: Daniel is now 15 months old and walking everywhere. We've been in our new city for 8 months, and it feels like we can finally breathe normally again. Phil loves his new position, and I've been thriving with remote work. We found a great apartment in a family-friendly neighborhood, and Daniel has started going to a wonderful daycare center 3 days a week. For the first few months after moving, I jumped every time someone knocked on our door or when I saw a car that looked familiar. But gradually, the constant anxiety has faded. We've built a new routine and made friends who don't know anything about our family drama. 2 months ago, Emma called with an update that brought some closure to the situation. Sarah had been hospitalized after what Herbert described to relatives as a nervous breakdown. Emma didn't have details about what triggered the hospitalization, but Sarah was placed in an inpatient psychiatric facility for 3 weeks. During Sarah's treatment, Herbert finally started seeing a counselor individually. According to Emma, Herbert admitted to the counselor that he had been so focused on helping Sarah through her grief that he had lost perspective on what was reasonable. Herbert apparently told the counselor that he knew taking someone else's baby was wrong, but Sarah's pain had been so intense that he convinced himself they were helping everyone involved. He said he had genuinely believed that we would eventually realize we couldn't handle parenthood and would be grateful for their intervention. The counselor helped Herbert understand that enabling Sarah's delusion had actually prevented her from processing her grief in a healthy way. Instead of facing the reality of her loss, Sarah had created an elaborate fantasy that allowed her to avoid dealing with her pain. After Sarah was released from the hospital, she and Herbert moved to another state where Sarah's sister lives. Emma heard they were starting fresh somewhere that wouldn't have constant reminders of their losses. My mom has apparently struggled with the aftermath of everything that happened. Several relatives have distanced themselves from her after learning about her role in pressuring us to give up Daniel. Emma said my mom has been telling people that she was just trying to help everyone and that the situation got out of hand. She claims she never intended for things to go as far as they did. But Emma also told me that my mom had been researching grandparents' rights laws just like Herbert had. She had consulted with lawyers about whether she could claim we were unfit parents based on our age and work schedules. My mom apparently thought that if she could build a legal case for the family to have custody, we would eventually agree to let Sarah raise Daniel rather than fight a court battle. She genuinely believed this was a reasonable solution that would make everyone happy. Learning this confirmed that our decision to move was the right one. My mom hadn't just been pressuring us emotionally, she had been actively working to undermine our parental rights. Emma asked if I wanted her to pass along my mom's request for contact information so she could try to rebuild our relationship. I told Emma no. Some people might think I'm being too harsh, but I can't forget that my mom was willing to take legal action to separate me from my child. That crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. Phil and I have talked about whether we'll ever feel safe having contact with my family again. Right now, the answer is no. Maybe that will change in the future, but we're not there yet. Daniel is thriving in our new environment. He's a curious, active toddler who loves books and playing with blocks. He's starting to say more words and has the sweetest laugh. Sometimes I wonder what kind of relationship he might have had with his extended family if things had been different. But then I remember the photo album Emma described, with pictures of Daniel that Sarah had collected and arranged as if he belonged to her. I can't expose Daniel to people who see him as something other than what he is, my son, not a replacement for someone else's loss. We're planning to have another baby in the next year or two. When we do, no one from my original family will even know about the pregnancy until we decide if and when to share the news. Our new life isn't perfect, but it's peaceful. We've joined a local parents group and made friends with other young families. Daniel has playdates and birthday parties and all the normal experiences I wanted him to have. Phil's parents visit regularly and have become wonderful grandparents to Daniel. They respect our decisions and support our family without trying to control or manipulate us. I know some people reading this might think I should have tried harder to help Sarah work through her grief or given my mom another chance to prove she had changed. But protecting Daniel had to be my first priority. Children aren't therapy tools for adults who are struggling with loss. Daniel's job is just to be a happy, healthy kid, not to heal someone else's trauma or fill someone else's emptiness. The restraining order is still in effect, though we haven't needed it since moving. We keep copies of all the documentation in case we ever need legal protection again, but I hope we never do. Moving across the country to escape your own family isn't something anyone plans for, but sometimes it's necessary. We traded the support system I thought we had for the peace of mind we actually needed. Daniel will grow up knowing he's loved and wanted exactly as he is. That's worth more than maintaining relationships with people who saw him as something he wasn't. For anyone else dealing with family members who can't respect boundaries around your children, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Protecting your child's safety and well-being is always the right choice, even when it means making difficult decisions about family relationships. We're building new traditions and creating new memories. Daniel won't remember any of the drama from his first year, which is exactly how it should be. Sometimes the family you build is more important than the family you were born into. We've learned that lesson the hard way, but we've come through it stronger and more united than ever. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My stepdad's in turn hid a camera in my birthday gift and was secretly filming me in my bedroom. My mom didn't believe me when I accused him. I'm Lily, 18F, and I live with my mom Carol, 42F, and my stepdad Mark, 45M. My mom married Mark about a year ago after divorcing my biological dad. The divorce was pretty rough. My dad cheated on my mom with his secretary and it was a messy split. I remember the night I found out about it. I was 16 and came home late from soccer practice to find my mom crying in the kitchen. She tried to hide it, but I could tell something was wrong. That's when she told me about catching my dad with his secretary at a hotel. It was devastating. The next few months were a blur of arguments, tears, and eventually, my dad moving out. I was angry at him for a long time. He tried to explain, to apologize, but I couldn't forgive him for hurting my mom like that. Eventually, I stopped answering his calls and texts. It's been almost 2 years now since I've spoken to him. Mark has been friends with my mom for years. They met at a neighborhood barbecue when we first moved to this town, about 10 years ago. I used to call him Uncle Mark when I was younger. He would come over for dinner sometimes, or join us for movie nights. He was always kind to me, helping me with my math homework or teaching me how to change a tire on my first car. When my mom started dating him about 6 months after the divorce, it felt weird at first. I was happy to see my mom smiling again, but it was strange to think of Uncle Mark as her boyfriend. It took some time to adjust to him being around more often, and eventually moving in. But he's always been nice to me and he makes my mom happy, so I've tried to be supportive. For some background, Mark is a lawyer and has his own small firm. He specializes in family law, which is kind of ironic given our family situation. A few months ago he hired a new intern, Alex, 23M. Mark was excited about it. He said Alex was top of his class in law school and had a lot of potential. I've met Alex a handful of times when he's come over to drop off documents for Mark or join us for dinner. The first time I met him was at a dinner party Mark hosted for his firm. Alex seemed nice enough, but I noticed he kept glancing at me throughout the night. At the time, I thought maybe he was just shy or nervous about being at his boss's house. After that, I ran into him a few more times. Once at a coffee shop near our house, he said he was picking up Mark's usual order. Another time he came by to drop off some files and stayed for dinner. Each time, he seemed a bit awkward around me, stumbling over his words or staring a bit too long. I didn't think much of it at the time, just chalked it up to him being socially awkward. Anyway, last week was my 18th birthday. I'm not big on celebrating, so I just went to school and hung out with friends after. My best friend Zoe, 18F, took me out for ice cream and we spent the afternoon at the park, just talking and enjoying the nice weather. When I got home, I was surprised to find that my mom and Mark had planned a small party for me with some family. They had decorated the living room with balloons and streamers, and my favorite cake from the local bakery was on the table. My aunt and uncle were there, along with my younger cousins. It was actually really nice of them to do this. We had dinner, my mom had made my favorite lasagna, and then sang happy birthday. After dinner, it was time for presents. My aunt and uncle got me a gift card to my favorite clothing store. My cousins had made me a colorful bracelet. Then my mom and Mark handed me an envelope. Inside were tickets to see my favorite band next month. I was thrilled. I had been saving up for these tickets, but they sold out before I could buy them. I hugged them both, genuinely grateful. I thought that was it for gifts, but later that evening, after everyone else had left, Mark came to my room with one more present. It was a big box wrapped in shiny pink paper. I was curious what else they could have gotten me, especially after the concert tickets. I opened it to find a wall clock. It was pink, my favorite color, with little cat designs around the numbers. The cats looked like they were chasing each other around the clock face. Honestly, it was kind of cute but also a bit childish for an 18th birthday gift. Still, I thanked Mark and he seemed happy that I liked it. He mentioned that he had asked Alex to pick it out as a surprise, saying something about wanting to get me something on his own but not being sure what an 18-year-old girl would like. I put the clock on my desk and didn't think much more about it. The rest of the evening was quiet. I called Zoe to tell her about the surprise party and the gifts. We talked for a while about the upcoming concert and made plans to go shopping for outfits. Later that night, I was texting Zoe again. She asked to see a picture of the clock, curious about what it looked like. I was already in bed and feeling lazy, so I just stretched out my arm to take a quick picture with my phone. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a tiny blue light on the clock that I hadn't seen before. It took me a second, but then I remembered something I'd seen in a crime documentary about hidden cameras sometimes having small lights like that. I got a sick feeling in my stomach and quickly looked up how to detect hidden cameras. Using my phone's front camera, I was able to confirm there was definitely a hidden camera in the clock. I felt violated and scared. Why would Mark give me something like this? I didn't want to believe he would do something so creepy, but he said he had Alex pick it out. Could Alex have done this without Mark knowing? I didn't know what to think. My mind was racing, thinking back to all the times Alex had been weird around me. Had he been planning this all along? In a panic, I called Zoe and told her what happened. She was furious and said I should call the police right away. I was hesitant to do that without talking to my mom first, but I was too freaked out to confront them that night. Zoe offered to come over, but I didn't want to risk waking up my mom and Mark. I ended up throwing the clock in the trash and removing all the stuffed animals and decorations in my room that I hadn't bought myself, just in case there were other cameras. I even checked the smoke detector and air vents, paranoid that there might be more hidden devices. I barely slept that night, feeling like I was being watched even though I knew the camera was in the trash. I kept thinking about all the times I had changed in my room, or the private conversations I'd had with Zoe. Had someone been watching all of that? The next morning, I woke up early, still feeling anxious. I heard my mom in the kitchen and decided to try and talk to her alone before Mark woke up. But as I was heading downstairs, I heard her gasp. She had found the clock in the trash while taking out the garbage. My mom confronted me about it, asking why I would throw away a birthday gift. I tried to explain about the camera, but she got angry, calling me ungrateful and paranoid. When I accused Mark of being a creep, she actually slapped me. In 18 years, she had never hit me before. I was shocked and hurt that she would take his side over mine without even listening to me. The noise must have woken up Mark, because he came into the kitchen asking what was going on. My mom started telling him how I had accused him of putting a camera in my room. Mark looked confused and hurt. He started to say something, but I couldn't bear to hear whatever excuse he might have. I felt betrayed and scared in my own home. I ran back upstairs, grabbed some clothes and my car keys, and drove to Zoe's house. I've been staying here for the past few days, trying to figure out what to do. My mom has been calling and texting nonstop. Mark too. They're both claiming there's an explanation and begging me to come home and talk. Part of me wonders if I overreacted. Maybe there is an innocent explanation. But I feel so betrayed by my mom's reaction and I'm scared to go back home not knowing the truth. Zoe thinks I should go to the police, but I'm worried about ruining my mom's marriage if it turns out to be a misunderstanding. Plus, I keep thinking about how Mark helped me through my parents' divorce, how he's always been kind to me. Could I have misjudged him so badly? I don't know what to do. Am I overreacting? Should I hear them out? Or should I trust my gut and take this to the authorities? I feel lost and could really use some advice on how to handle this. I can't stay at Zoe's forever, but I'm terrified of going back home. Update 1. It's been a few days since my last post and a lot has happened. First, thank you to everyone who offered advice and support. Your comments really helped me get the courage to take action and stand up for myself. The morning after I posted, my mom and Mark showed up at Zoe's house. I was surprised they knew where to find me, but I guess it wasn't hard to figure out. I didn't want to see Mark, but my mom begged me to hear them out. They both looked terrible, like they hadn't slept in days. Against my better judgment, I agreed to talk. We sat in Zoe's living room. Her parents were kind enough to give us privacy, but stayed nearby in case I needed support. Mark started by swearing he had no idea about the camera. He looked genuinely distressed as he explained that he had asked Alex to find a birthday gift for me because he wanted to get me something special on his own, separate from the concert tickets he and my mom had bought. He showed me texts between him and Alex where he asked Alex to find a birthday gift for me. There was a picture of the clock, but it just looked normal in the image. Mark said he thought it was perfect since I love pink and cats. He even showed me the receipt where he had transferred money to Alex to buy the gift. I told him about the times Alex had seemed creepy around me, the staring, the awkward conversations, how he always seemed to be around. As I spoke, I saw Mark's face change from confusion to anger. He said he had no idea Alex had been behaving that way and felt awful for not noticing and for putting me in danger. My mom broke down crying, apologizing over and over for not believing me. She said she had been in shock and reacted badly, that she was sorry for hitting me and for making me feel unsafe in my own home. Seeing her so upset made me realize how much this situation had affected all of us. After a lot of discussion, we decided to go to the police. Mark said he'd do whatever it took to make this right, even if it meant his firm getting bad publicity. We gathered all the evidence we could, the texts, the clock, everything. The drive to the police station was tense. I sat in the back seat, still not entirely comfortable being close to Mark. My mom kept looking back at me, her eyes red from crying. Mark was quiet, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. At the station, I gave my statement to a female officer. She was kind and patient, listening carefully as I explained everything that had happened. They took the clock as evidence and asked for Mark's phone to verify the texts. They questioned Mark separately, which made me nervous. What if he said something to implicate himself? What if this was all an elaborate setup? But when he came out, he said he had cooperated fully, giving them all the information he had about Alex and offering to provide any additional help they needed. The police said they'd investigate Alex right away. They asked us to go home and wait for their call. The idea of going back to the house made me anxious, but I also didn't want to impose on Zoe's family any longer. When we got home, the atmosphere was awkward. None of us really knew what to say. My mom tried to make small talk, asking if I was hungry, if I needed anything. Mark kept his distance, sensing my discomfort. I spent most of the day in my room, texting Zoe and updating her on what had happened. Later that evening, we got a call from the police. Alex had been arrested. Apparently when confronted, he broke down and confessed to everything. He admitted to having a crush on me and buying the camera clock to spy on me. He said he had been planning it for months, waiting for an opportunity. Hearing this made me sick to my stomach. I ran to the bathroom, barely making it before I threw up. My mom followed me, holding my hair back and rubbing my back like she used to when I was little and had the flu. For a moment, it felt like old times, before all this craziness had started. The police did a thorough search of our house to check for other devices, but thankfully found nothing else. They went through every room, checked all the electronics, even looked in the air vents. It was invasive, but also reassuring to know there were no other hidden cameras. They're going through Alex's computer and phone records now to see if he's done this to anyone else. The thought that there might be other victims out there makes me feel even worse about the whole situation. I'm still processing everything. I'm glad Alex was caught, but I feel violated and angry. I can't believe this happened. My mom and Mark have been very supportive, giving me space when I need it but also making sure I know they're there for me. We're looking into counseling options to help me deal with this. I'm also struggling with guilt over almost ruining my mom and Mark's marriage. But they both assure me none of this is my fault. Mark especially feels terrible for not being more careful about who he hired and trusted. He's been beating himself up about it, saying he should have noticed something was off about Alex. The past few days have been a roller coaster of emotions. One minute I feel relieved that the truth is out, the next I'm angry at Alex for violating my privacy, then I feel guilty for doubting Mark, then scared about what might have happened if I hadn't noticed the camera. It's exhausting. I'm trying to get back to normal life, but it's hard. I jump at unexpected noises, I'm paranoid about changing clothes in my room, and I'm constantly checking for hidden cameras everywhere I go. My mom suggested I stay home from school for a few days to process everything, which I'm grateful for. Thank you again to everyone who encouraged me to trust my instincts and go to the police. I don't know what would have happened if I had just ignored my suspicions. I'll update again when I know more about what's happening with the case against Alex. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update. The case against Alex is moving forward. He's been formally charged with several crimes related to invasion of privacy and voyeurism. Because I had just turned 18, they couldn't charge him with anything related to minors, even though he admitted to having inappropriate feelings for me when I was 17. The investigation uncovered some disturbing things. Alex had been following all my social media accounts using fake profiles. He had saved hundreds of my photos, not just public ones but also ones I had only shared with friends. The police also found evidence that he had researched other types of hidden cameras and tracking devices. It's chilling to think what might have happened if I hadn't noticed that tiny light on the clock. The detectives interviewed some of Alex's former classmates and coworkers. Apparently, he had a history of obsessive behavior towards women, but nothing that had ever escalated to this level before. A few girls from his college said he would often stare at them or try to insert himself into their friend groups, but they had just thought he was socially awkward. Mark's law firm has taken a hit from all this. He's lost a few clients who were uncomfortable with the scandal. Some people in town have been gossiping, wondering if Mark was somehow involved. He says he doesn't care about the business impact, that my safety is more important, but I can tell it's stressing him out. He's implemented much stricter background checks for all employees and interns now. My mom and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. I'm still hurt by how quickly she sided with Mark over me, but I understand she was in shock. We're in family counseling to work through everything. It's helping, but it's a slow process. There are still moments when I flinch if she moves too quickly near me, remembering the slap. She notices and it makes her cry every time. School has been tough. Someone leaked the story to the local news, and even though they didn't use my name, everyone figured out it was me. Some people have been supportive, but others whisper and stare when I walk by. A few girls I thought were my friends have been avoiding me, like what happened to me is somehow contagious. I'm trying to move forward with my life. I deleted all my old social media accounts and started fresh with much stricter privacy settings. I'm still jumpy and paranoid sometimes, especially in my room, but it's getting better. I've rearranged my furniture and redecorated a bit, trying to make the space feel like mine again. I'm heading to college in the fall and looking forward to a fresh start. I've decided to go to a school in another state, partly to get away from all the gossip and stares. My mom is sad about me going so far, but she understands my need for a new beginning. The hardest part has been dealing with the feeling of betrayal. Not just from Alex, who I barely knew, but from the adults I trusted. Even though Mark wasn't involved, I can't help feeling angry that he brought Alex into our lives. And my mom's initial reaction still hurts. I'm working on forgiveness, but it's not easy. My dad found out about what happened through the grapevine. He's been trying to reach out, saying he wants to support me through this. Part of me wants to let him in, to have my dad comfort me like when I was little. But another part is still angry about the affair and how he abandoned us. I haven't decided yet if I'll respond to his messages. I've been spending a lot of time with Zoe. She's been my rock through all of this, always there to listen when I need to vent or just sit with me in silence when I don't want to talk. We've been planning our dorm decor for college, focusing on the future instead of dwelling on what happened. The prosecutors have offered Alex a plea deal. They say it's a strong case but want to spare me the stress of a trial. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Part of me wants him to face a jury and be publicly shamed for what he did. But another part just wants this all to be over. I'll update again when there's news about Alex's plea deal or trial. Thank you all again for your support through this nightmare. Update 3, it's been 4 months since everything happened. Alex's case is finally over. He took the plea deal to avoid a longer sentence. He'll serve 6 months in jail, have to register as a sex offender, and be on probation for 5 years after release. I'm disappointed he didn't get a harsher sentence, but my lawyer says this is fairly standard for a first offense where no actual images were captured. At least it will be on his record permanently, which might prevent him from doing this to someone else in the future. The aftermath of all this is still affecting my family. Mark's law firm is struggling. He's had to let go of a few employees and take on more work himself. I feel guilty about this sometimes, even though I know it's not my fault. My mom has been supportive of Mark, picking up extra shifts at her job to help with our finances. I'm mostly focused on moving forward now. I started college last month and I'm slowly adjusting to my new life. Being away from home has actually helped me feel safer and more independent. My roommate doesn't know about what happened, and it's nice to just be a normal college student in her eyes. I've joined a support group for survivors of stalking and privacy violations. It's been helpful to talk to others who understand what I've been through. Some of their stories are even worse than mine, which puts things in perspective. My relationship with my mom and Mark is still complicated. We talk regularly and they're trying hard to rebuild trust, but there's still tension. I find myself getting irritated with them easily, then feeling guilty about it. I'm not sure our family will ever be the same, but we're working on it. I did end up responding to my dad's messages. We've had a few phone calls. It's awkward and there's a lot of hurt there, but it's also been nice to have his support. He's talked about coming to visit me at college, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. Zoe and I are at different colleges now, but we still talk almost every day. She's been amazing through all of this, always there when I need her. I don't know what I would have done without her support. This whole experience has changed me. I'm more cautious, more aware of my surroundings. But I'm also stronger. I stood up for myself, trusted my instincts, and got through something terrible. I still have bad days where I feel angry or scared or sad about what happened. But I'm learning to cope with those feelings. I'm focusing on my studies, making new friends, and trying new things. Slowly but surely, I'm reclaiming my life.